Welcome to Homeward. I'm Jim Burns, and I am honored that you joined us today for what is going to be a very special podcast. We're going to talk about reconnecting with your estranged adult child. Did you know this? That the latest research is saying, and I just read it yesterday, that 27% of adult children are estranged from at least one family member. So if that's your case, then hey, you're not alone. And whether you have an estranged child or not, this is going to be an amazing conversation today. I have wanted Tina Gilbertson on this podcast since before this podcast started, which is about a year ago. She wrote a great book called Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child. And it's a wonderful book. In fact, I'm going to put it up here, and Elijah's going to show it. If you're in the YouTube channel, you get to see the book. But I'm convinced Tina's book is the very best, and I often recommend it. Love the book. I guess I was kind of naive when I wrote my book called Doing Life with Your Adult Children, Keep Your Mouth Shut, and welcome Matt out, because it never dawned on me that literally a majority of the questions we would get at Homeward was about adult children and ones that where there was estrangement. So I went searching for answers because I did not have the answers, and I didn't write about it in that book very much. And I found Tina, and I found her work, and I found her website. And so I have read other books on estrangement, and to be honest, Tina's is my favorite. I know you're not supposed to say that about your own children, but I guess you can say that about books. I'm convinced her book is the best, and I, like I said, often recommend it. Tina Gilbertson is a professional counselor specializing in family estrangement, so needed in our world today. She's been quoted on hundreds of major media outlets. I feel like I'm kind of with an all-star here. The New York Times, the Washington Post, Real Simple, which my wife reads. She hosts the Reconnection Club podcast, and her website is awesome. And we're going to have her at the very end talk about the Reconnection Club, because I think some of you will want to hear about that. As I said before, I recommend her book, Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child, on a regular basis, and I recommend it to you, and you're going to know why when we're done talking. So say you've been cut off by your adult child, or you know someone who's been cut off. This conversation is going to be for you. On today's podcast, you're going to find support, and you're going to find understanding. But most of all, I think you're actually going to find some tools to repair the relationship, along with the confidence to use those tools. So I'm very excited about putting this in front of you. And if you have little kids and they're not estranged, what I find with Tina is that she just writes good parenting stuff in the midst of, as she talks about estrangement. So Tina, it's an honor to have you on the podcast today. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's an honor to be on your show. I'm so glad to be able to have this conversation with you today about a topic that's really affecting a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know it. I know it. And some people sometimes think they're just alone in this, when in fact, like I said at the beginning, I mean, 27%, it's a quarter of the people have some. It might not just be with parents, but it is the case, and you live this world and you help this world. Mm-hmm. You said in your book, healing the rift of an estrangement is possible, but shame and guilt and anger can make the work much harder for parents than it really needs to be. Unpack that for me.
Yeah, I think parents don't always realize the impact that they can have in their relationship with their children. Right. When the relationship goes badly, it's very common for people to feel ashamed, or angry at the child, like, look how much I did, and this is how you're treating me. So all of these emotions are perfectly normal and human, but they get in the way of the parent being able to kind of corral their personal power and put it to good use in making any repairs that might be needed. And often there are repairs needed. Sometimes estrangement is really very much a developmental act, an adult child kind of taking some space, some separation, just to become who they are, like you talk about in your book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. But sometimes there are underlying problems, and parents can address those or not, and that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's so important. A lot of times parents want to, come in and fix it really quickly, and you don't suggest that they do that. In fact, one of the things that I really appreciate at the beginning of your book is you say there's a lot of pain and misunderstanding that comes from estrangement, but you talk about the need for compassion and empathy. And, that's hard to do when you're angry and when you're frustrated.
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it starts with yourself. Yeah. If we're having a hard time with self-compassion, which many parents I talk to do, then it's really hard to bring compassion to a situation or to a relationship. So starting with yourself is going to be easier than starting with someone you're mad at, or someone who feels like they're mistreating you. And how do you show yourself compassion? It's an activity. It's an action. People tell me, well, I speak to myself as though to a good friend, but it doesn't really work, or it doesn't stick. But if you take actions to show your self-care and kindness, that's how you start to build self-compassion. And then it kind of radiates outward.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that sometimes it's the same people who didn't do self-care when their kids were teenagers, or, they were focused on their kids, and all of a sudden, there's some trauma that takes place. Well, they've not been in the habit of doing self-care. And what you're saying is, no, if you do self-care and you get healthy yourself, then you're going to be able to show more compassion and empathy to your adult child.
Right. And you're going to have also all of your intelligence and your capabilities and your skills to bring to bear. When you are feeling, okay in yourself, you have all those resources. When you're stressed, in a panic mode, or deep in shame, it's kind of like you're buried in this and you can't get to the gifts that you have.
No, so good, so good. In your book, you talk about the faces of estrangement. And I was talking with a woman today who said, I have one son and daughter-in-law who really don't think they're estranged. They kind of are in her mind. And I think, I know the story. I think they probably are, but they don't think they are. And so there's these different faces that you talk about, the different ways of estrangement. Help us understand maybe what is estrangement, and then what are the different faces of estrangement that take place that you're seeing as people come to you for counseling, as people come to your website, as people read your book, as people are a part of the community that you have. Help us understand that.
Yeah, that's an interesting example that you gave, where one person feels the relationship estranged and on the other side they don't. That sounds like a differing level of need for contact, a differing level of comfort with contact. Sounds like the adult children are A-okay with the amount of contact, whether it's once a month or once a year. That's fine with them, and they think everything's good. So that I would just call a mismatch.
Interesting.
in level of comfort or desire for contact. But there are different kinds of estrangement. Broadly speaking, there's emotional estrangement, where we may see each other all the time, and yet it feels like we're not connecting emotionally, or maybe one of us is kind of longing for a little bit more closeness, or a lot more closeness than we seem to have. That, I would say, is an emotional estrangement rather than a physical or logistical one. There is total silence, and where you don't see each other, you don't speak, you don't hear from each other. That used to be easier in the olden days, when before the internet, it was a lot easier to disappear. My grandmother left her parents when she was, 19, and never, as far as I know, never went back.
Amazing.
My mom grew up without knowing her grandparents. That was easier 100 years ago.
Yes, it is. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other type of estrangement is maybe more of an on-again, off-again kind of thing, where it kind of rises above the level of the silent treatment, because these estrangements may last for years. But there's a trouble in the relationship that makes it hard to stay together once we come together. So we go apart again for a while, and then we try again. That's more of a cyclical estrangement.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's not all one size fits all. And sometimes people have to understand that, because they think they're the only people experiencing it, but it's real to them. And we have to go from where we're at. You have something that you have, the do's and don'ts, and I love what you say. And I'm not saying all of them, but you say, don't blame, take responsibility, balance activity with passivity, don't stop living yourself, embrace I'm sorry, don't see reassurance from your estranged. Don't look for reassurance from your estranged. I'm kind of killing some of the things that you wrote so articulately. But one of the things you said is don't blame. What does that mean?
Well, I think that blame is not very constructive. Once we, first of all, you and I are not going to agree on who's to blame if we have trouble in our relationship, probably. So that's kind of a dead end.
Very good.
responsibility is constructive.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people say to me, well, Tina, it sounds like you're blaming the parent for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this adult child who's behaving terribly toward the parent, and you're blaming the parent.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, what I'm saying is, if you are the one who's left behind, if you are the one who's not seeking contact or not available for contact, then it falls on your shoulders to be the one to do the solving. You've kind of lost the luxury of saying, hey, meet me in the middle, because they're not meeting you at all.
Yeah.
And that's just the harsh reality.
So when somebody says that to you, they say, my kid is not willing to even, communicate. I don't think it's all me. I think mainly it's the kid for whatever reason. What do you say to them? How do they begin to possibly repair if they can't communicate with their kid?
That's a really great question. There may be some work on the adult child's side that they have to do to be ready again to communicate. All we can do on the parent side is to use what we have, the resource we have, which is the parent, to address any underlying problems in the relationship from this end. There's so much you can do from your end, just in terms of personal healing, personal growth, developing self-compassion, like we talked about, so that when the adult child, and in most cases there will come a time when they're ready to reach out and have contact, you're ready to.
Right. I find that a lot of times, at least in my work, I see the parent wants more involvement than the adult child. And kind of what I sensed in your writing is that you kind of have to run a little bit with the adult child's time frame as opposed to our time frame that wants to go on vacation every other weekend and spend all this time together. Is that right? That we have to slow it down a bit?
It is. The person who wants less contact is the person who's setting the schedule for contact. I mean, unfortunately, it's like in couples counseling.
Right.
The person who wants less sexual contact is kind of setting the schedule.
No, you're exactly right. For parents, you talk about taking responsibility. Phrase I sometimes use is, you're not defined by your kid's choice. And that's not just for estranged kids, but you're just not defined. But talk about taking responsibility. Take responsibility. What does that mean to take responsibility?
It really is taking responsibility for the idea of, this is a problem that I have in my life. I may not be to blame. I may not have done the things that I'm being accused of doing, but this is a problem for me. Yeah. And so it falls on me to figure out how to solve it. What can I bring to the conversation? What can I bring to the situation that will maybe create a shift or possibilities?
Yeah. So when you're in a relationship with your estranged child, and there's the blame and the shame going both ways typically, and well, actually both ways, and then also inward, because I'm blaming myself or I'm shaming myself, and so it's going everywhere, every direction. And you say embrace I'm sorry. I love what you talk about with that. What do you mean by that?
Well, there comes a time when a relationship is in trouble. And if I have done sufficient personal work to forgive myself for anything that I regret, and if I've done some healing, I come to a place of sufficient compassion that I can see the ways in which I might have unwittingly and unwillingly hurt my child. Yeah. And it's impossible not to hurt your kids. It's just part of life. All kids get hurt by good parents doing all the right things. It's part of being a child, is growing up and learning that you are conditionally acceptable to some degree in society, right? You can't do anything you want.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that phrase. I'm just telling you, conditionally acceptable is so good. You're right.
Right. And kids are easily shamed. They can't distinguish between my dirty pants and me. I'm a bad person because my pants are dirty. Yeah. So I'm not sure how I got onto that, but I think we are a society.
Yeah. And we need to say, and we need, what you're saying is sometimes we lead with I'm sorry, even though they have issues too.
Exactly.
But how do you say to a child that literally they've got some issues, but there's something you can be sorry for. So how do you say that without some parents don't want to do that because they go, yeah, it's more their problem than ours.
Yes. Well,
so what do you do?
I wouldn't apologize if you don't feel like apologizing. I think that's inauthentic and it's not going to fly.
Mm-hmm.
People can tell, they can feel the honesty.
Yeah.
But many parents I speak with really do get to a point sometimes. I mean, not every parent I think has to apologize.
Right.
I don't think that's a necessary part of healing from estrangement. I think in an online survey, 2/3 of estranged adult children said that they would like an apology. The other third, doesn't matter.
Interesting.
But if you're ready to apologize, then there are very specific ways to do that. Yeah. Simply, I'm sorry I did this or didn't do that. Not I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you think I. So the
That's
language
a big difference,
is quite
by the way.
important.
The language is important with your apology. Yeah. Go ahead.
Also, I'm not perfect. That's kind of vague. It doesn't really cover the specificity base. I'm sorry if I did anything that hurt you. Yeah. Well, if you kind of know that someone is holding a grudge or is hurt, then I'm sorry if I hurt you. It takes too little accountability, and it takes a step back and says, oh, did you get hurt? Well, then I'm sorry. Yeah. But it's, you want to get to a real understanding of what it was that you did or didn't do, and what was the impact of that. Yeah. And once you do that, then you may just feel moved to apologize really well.
What do you say to the parent who really did something maybe awful? Maybe there was something in their life where there was addictions or horrible patterns or whatever, and now they've kind of made a turnaround, and now they want the relationship, and they didn't. I mean, I'm not saying it was heavy duty abuse. That's a whole different kind of story. But this parent has incredible remorse. They want to connect with their adult child, but literally there is a I'm sorry that needs to be done. But the child hasn't seen some of the changes. I mean, their parents are in the empty nest. They're someplace else. What do you say to that parent who just goes, I blew it. I understand what, I talked to a husband, ex, he had affairs and he had all these kind of messes. And then now he wants to jump back in. And his daughter was like, you weren't there for me from 14 to, now I'm 30 some years old and you want a relationship and you were not there for me. I don't want a relationship with you. He's sad because now he wants to come back in. What do you say to that person who comes into your office?
I say, I am so sorry. I can feel that sadness and that remorse. I have sat with people who have such remorse. I feel it just into my bones, the remorse that they have. And I think it's very necessary if you want to allow that remorse to lead to redemption, to really understand your younger self and forgive. Forgive your younger self. You did what you knew to do at the time. You used the tools that were in your toolkit at the time. You were coming from whatever was done to and for you as a child. You learned what you lived, and that's what you had to deliver. And so understanding and forgiving yourself, I would put as step one before apologizing.
Isn't it interesting? And you keep coming back to this really great thought. And I love the word that you use, toolkits, because it's in your books, where you have, we need to put these tools in our kit. I love that because it's a great illustration. So we got to work on ourself, obviously. But it's interesting how often it blends. We talked about compassion and empathy. If you aren't feeling good about yourself and you haven't done the work yourself, you're not going to be able to give compassion and empathy to your adult child either.
That's right. Especially because, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, especially because children are often, they feel like an extension of yourself to some degree. Okay. And so the relationship that you have with yourself is going to inform the relationship that you have with your child. Many people who have a really tough relationship with themselves, they're hard on themselves, they find it hard to really emotionally connect with their child. They find themselves being hard on their child, or finding it hard to be kind as they want to be to their children.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. So good. I kind of feel like we're getting counseling from Tina today on 100 levels. I was thinking about my relationship with Kathy. As some of you know, I've been married to Kathy for 50 years. And she says, you go to sorry too quick. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, your sorry doesn't sound like you really mean it, because I really quickly would go, I'm sorry, Kathy. And she just goes, you need to, she wants me to rethink it or how I say it. And she's been saying that for only 50 years. So we're going to make it, everybody, but we still, talk about it sometimes. Anyway, Tina Gilbertson is with us today. She is my go-to person when it comes to dealing with parents who are estranged from their adult children. Her book is great. It's called Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child. Here it is, everybody, if you're on the YouTube channel. See, some of you should watch the YouTube channel. You get to see our beautiful faces, and you get to see this book right here. So I suggest that you go get it. And all things about Tina and her great work are found in our podcast show notes. So if you're driving, don't stop. You can go to the podcast show notes later. And we'll take this quick break, and we'll be right back. Hi, Jim Burns here. I am so excited about what's going on at Homeward. Some of you are just learning that things are changing around here, and one of the most exciting things changing is our new president, Marcus. And Marcus, tell us what's going on with Homeward.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Really appreciate it. So excited to share with you, give you a glimpse of what God is doing in this new season at Homeward. And it's a blend. It's a blend of new and tried and true. And our mission right now is, how do we take these 4 decades, these 40 years of ministry, of resources, of principles that God has been changing lives throughout the nation and beyond, and expand that, but also tether it to a younger generation. And the way we're going to do that is through a blend of tried and true resources and principles and events, as well as new initiatives. And I'll start off with the new. On the new side, we have a new website. We are rebranding. We've got new staff. We've got new faces and new voices to our growing social media presence, and that is wonderful. But also on the tried and true side, we've got a Refreshing Your Marriage retreat that has been an amazing, impactful event. We've got our conferences like Trainer for Trainers, and our resources like our books that we're going to continue to write and expand and change lives. Speaking of which, Jim, share with us the latest update of what's going on in the book world here at
You
Homeward.
got it. And I'm excited about your leadership, and I'm excited about where we're going at Homeward. It's going to be pretty incredible. We've got a book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. We have other books, of course, but that's still on the bestseller list after 5 years. Even this month, it's on the bestseller list. And now there's a new one that's going to be coming out called When Your Adult Child Strays, Trading Heartache for Hope. And I'm doing this book right now, and there's going to be a course with it. And we have other books on sexuality and things like that that are really, really making a difference all around this world.
So with all the things going on right now at Homeward, here's what you can do. God is putting in our heart this desire and this plan to expand our Refreshing Your Marriage conference that I recently attended, and it helped my wife and I have a breakthrough that God was working in our hearts for a while. But beyond that, I saw other couples experiencing the same thing. So we are going to expand our Refreshing Your Marriage conference, take it to other cities, and we want to be able to not only help make sure that happens, but also those that can't afford it, that need to be resourced and some scholarships. So we want to make sure nobody misses out on a chance to get their marriage refreshed and to draw closer to the Lord. So I'm asking you to make a special gift above and beyond to support that. Thank you so much, Homeward.
Welcome back. I'm Jim Burns. Amazing conversation today with Tina Gilbertson. We're talking about her book. It's the title of this podcast today, Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child. And as you can already tell, if you've been listening to this, anybody needs this. And yet again, if you have an estranged relationship, it's not easy. And nobody is saying it's easy. And yet what I'm learning today is, for a lot of us, we have to, start with us and work on our own stuff. And then as we begin, now we're going to talk about how do we repair this relationship. And I think there's a lot of hope. And at the end, I'll have Tina tell you a little bit about Reconnection Club and how you can get involved in more in the great work she's doing. Tina, you talk about using clear and direct communication with your estranged child when you can. Sometimes they won't pay any attention to it. Yeah. Someone once said, a friend of mine actually, who said this and wrote it in her book, to be clear is to be kind. Can you give us an illustration of how to be clear and direct using love as an illustration on how to do that even if you still have a little bit of anger, or they have some anger or frustration, how do you be clear and direct in that kind of situation?
Well, let me just acknowledge that this is an ideal,
Yeah.
right? I don't know anybody who is, including myself, who communicates clearly and directly all the time.
Right.
But I do feel that quote is brilliant. It is kinder to be clear. I've had many times in my life when I have tried to be nice, tried to say things softly, and people have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They have no idea what I'm
Right.
trying to say. So let's take the example of an adult child who needs to move back in with you because they lose a job.
Yeah, great
whatever.
illustration.
You will want to set some boundaries, perhaps, for their contribution while they're living at home. And so you might say, I'm really happy to host you here. Great to have you here. But we do need you to make a contribution to the household while you're here. So right there, that's a single sentence.
So
we need
good.
you to make a contribution to the household.
Yeah.
We start with, it's true. I'm really happy you're here. It's great to have you. We love you. And we need you to make a contribution while you're here. And then you might want to, as you often say, Jim, people support what they help to create.
Yes.
So then you might want to start talking about contributions. How should we do this?
No, it's so true. I'm thinking about an experience, and I'm not sure if I wrote about this in the book Doing Life with Your Adult Children, but it is so real to us. Our daughter, Becca, wanted to stay in our house for 2 months. She'd had a roommate, and the girl left, and so we said, we'd love to have you. And so she said, well, now I'm going to go back and get a master's in clinical psych, and so I'm looking for a cheap place to stay. And so we thought we did this perfect because we set it up, and I even brought a bucket with a toilet brush because she hadn't really probably done that much in high school. So now she's post college, and I said, so you're in charge of this bathroom, and I gave her all this thing. And then just out in the spur of the moment, Kathy and I hadn't talked. We talked about having this direct conversation, and then I said, do you have anything for us? And I thought she was just going to say, you are the beloved parents. I'm just happy to be here. And she goes, well, Dad, now she focused on me and not Kathy. And she goes, Dad, sometimes when I bring my friends over, because you were a youth worker, you just come and sit on the couch and they love you. And she was trying not to hurt my feelings. They love you, but you kind of take over. And I need to give you permission to come into my world. And we have a spa in our backyard. And she goes, you even came, a couple of weeks ago and you just sat down. And one of her friends had invited me, but Becca had not. I said, Becca, that is so good. And I appreciate it. And she said, you need to ask my permission. And I loved that because now it was back and forth.
And you might say, that was kind of her to be clear, but it might also have hurt a little bit. And that's something that I think we all need to understand is when you're kind, it doesn't mean that people feel good.
No. You know what? I went into my bedroom and pouted just a little bit for me.
Of course.
But, it was so good because even with Becca, what we asked for her was not a lot. But, we'd love to have a dinner with you once a week. And we'd love for you to tell us. We know your hours are different than our hours, and you're going to be studying, you're going to be doing different things. But if you just text us at 11 o'clock, because we're going to be up thinking about you, and we know you're, and she's a responsible kid, but you're just if you'll do that. And she didn't always do the text. I'll just tell you that right now. But having those direct conversations were really good. Then you have to deal with it when they, it's our house. So in our house, there were certain rules. She didn't smoke pot or do that kind of stuff, but she wasn't going to smoke pot in our house. She wasn't going to bring boys into our house and spend the night. Those were our rules. Mm-hmm. Our rules, we just did that. If she didn't like it, she could move out of the house.
Exactly.
So anyway, I love that what you said about that. I find some parents step into the role of codependency, and you talked about codependency in your book, mm-hmm. And many don't know what codependency is, or they don't know that they're being codependent in the relationship. Help us unpack that for just a minute.
Certain aspects of codependency can be hard to tease apart from normal parenting.
Right.
Codependency, in my understanding, is essentially someone else's needs are more real to you and more imperative for you than your own.
Right.
This is seen a lot in enmeshment. Enmeshment is, you might call it a dynamic where a family is almost too close,
sure,
where the boundaries between people are very murky. It's not clear if there's an upset. It's not clear whose feelings are whose.
Yeah.
Is it your anxiety or am I
Right.
anxious? Which one of us
Yeah.
is anxious?
Right.
Because I'm feeling it, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it's mine or yours. So codependency is often a feature, let's say, not a
Yes.
benefit, but a feature of
Right.
enmeshment.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
enmeshment is kind of like basically the opposite of healthy boundaries.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I love how you described that, by the way. I just read, again, Codependent No More, which is kind of one of the main books on that.
Yeah.
And I think you did a great job of explaining that in a beautiful way. Enmeshment. You know, I was thinking about my own family. We were more enmeshed, and then you used a word and I'm going off the script here, but you used a word in your book that's a psychological word, and I wasn't even going to bring it up because it's hard to sometimes discuss, or not discuss, but hard to understand for us lay people. But individuation. So we're an enmeshed family, and I look up at my kids as young adults and go, you know what? We're probably too enmeshed. They haven't become their own people. They're, in some ways. And I've watched my girls now, they're in their 30s. I've watched them all individuate. And part of it I don't like because I want them to still be enmeshed in our relationship.
Yeah.
Talk about individuate. Why is that so important to have become your own person? Because part of some estrangement might just be that they're becoming their own person.
Exactly right. And they may feel like who they are, it's tenuous enough that they don't want to be pulled back into childhood and who they used to be. And they may feel like some parts of who they are maybe don't fit very well. And so they may take space to kind of harden their new shell, almost. And that's when they may estrange from not only parents, but siblings and childhood friends even. So individuation is something that you and I, in theory, are still working on. It's a lifelong process, along with another one called differentiation, which is even more complex. But it's a normal process that if it gets stunted, it may create a situation of it kind of a need to break free. And even if they love you.
Yeah. And sometimes the need to break free because they were so enmeshed feels like estrangement because they don't know how to do this properly.
Right.
And so they do estrange. But the truth is that they're just trying to become their own selves. And sometimes that's the one where there's more hope because they can come back or they will come back. They'll come back in a if you would, in a different way. What do you say to the parent whose son or daughter just won't talk to them? The emails and the texts go unanswered. They are ignored. They send a birthday gift, and they get nothing. Yeah. So these are the people who are, they just feel they're just sad all the time.
Yes.
What do you say to that person?
I say I am sorry. I think that pain, the pain of rejection, is among the worst pain that we can experience, especially from your own kids. It's like a catastrophe. Yeah. And so this is a kind of an emergency for your whole being. You're not just your mind and your heart, but your spirit and your body. It's all hurting. And so self-compassion is number one. And once you get to rest and recover from this sort of tragedy unfolding in your life, then once you can be calm physically and mentally, you can start to look into and explore the idea that most enmeshments are temporary. I am the parent. I have a lot of input potentially into addressing whatever the problems were that led to an estrangement. Remember, estrangement is kind of the end of a long process for the person who becomes estranged. For a parent, it might be a sudden upset.
It becomes a shock to them. In fact, I was on a radio broadcast yesterday, and a woman called, and she was talking about estrangement. She was estranged from her son, and I said, so what is the reason for the estrangement? She goes, I don't know. So you must get tons of people.
Oh, yes.
So what do you say to when they don't know?
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
You've got to know. You've got to. And they say, well, he won't tell me.
Right.
So how can I know? I'm offering that there is lots of information, not just in my book and your book, by the way, Doing Life with your adult children. Yeah. But there's information on the internet. There's lots of information about how things go wrong in families between parents and children. There's lots of information that can inform you about your relationship with your child. So it's not hopeless, even if you hear nothing from them. And by the way, silence don't take that to mean I hate you, I never want to speak to you again. That's not necessarily what silence means. Most of the time it's not. It might mean I need some space right now. It might mean I don't know how to fix the relationship and I don't have time to deal with it, so I've put it on the back burner. You know, it could mean lots of things that are not personal.
That's
to the parent.
we take it personal. We're going to take it personal.
Of course.
And if they don't answer the text or they don't answer the call, my kids, who I have a good relationship with, I think, I have to ask them, I guess, but I'll text them and I'll go, what is going on? It's been, 30 seconds and they haven't texted. It's been 3 hours, whatever. And yet, we just have to wait. Their timing is different than our timing. So interesting. Now, you talk about reconciliation of the adult children with parents, and I read your book and I got a lot of hope. You have seen repair of estranged relationships. Talk to the person who needs to see some hope today. They're in that stage where they're just devastated. And I mean, this is, and also with this podcast, as with any podcast, there's somebody who's been listening to this conversation and they're sending it to their friend who has a friend, kind of a thing. So they're like, wait, you are talking my language here. What do you say to them? They want to repair. It's the thing that they hope for, the thing that they pray for, the thing that they want more than anything else, and they're not seeing it. But talk to the person who literally, because you've seen repair over and over and over again.
Yes, I have. There's so much to say about that. I'm not going to be able to think of it all right now. But first, remember, contact is not repair. So if you don't have contact, that doesn't mean that you can't repair. Wow. Secondly, reconciliation can happen at any time without your participation. Yeah. Adult children do their own work. They make a decision and they suddenly the parent gets a call. I have seen 2 separate cases where a parent was estranged for 15 years or more and thought that they would never hear from their child again. Yeah. And in both cases, there was the child did come back. Right. And, both, of course, involved a process. But they can come back, even when you think that will never happen. Yeah. The key is not to lose those 15 years. Let's hope it's not going to be 15 years for most people. And but also, don't think that if you don't solve it today, they're going to get further and further away and it's going to get harder and harder to repair. Yeah. Don't think like that, because it's not necessarily true. In some cases, time going by actually allows for a cooling off period, and it might be easier to get back together with a little more time. It just depends.
You're right. I mean, it really sounds like cooling off. I mean, that's good in any relationship, but I think in an estranged relationship, what we're looking at as negative may be really positive, because, we're not the only ones who are dealing with it. It's our estranged child who's dealing with it too, and they need that cooling off time too.
That's right.
It's really, really good. We don't have much time left, but I would love for you to tell our listeners how they can learn more about your work and also what the Reconnection Club is all about.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jim. I would suggest, if anybody's interested, to start by reading my book, Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child. It's available in your local library. Just read the book. If it speaks to you, if it makes sense to you, you might want to also listen to my podcast, the Reconnection Club podcast, which is available for free for anyone to listen to, reconnectionclub.com/podcast. And so there's a lot of information there. If you would like further support, further information, and you'd like to connect with other parents, the Reconnection Club is an online school for parents that offers education about the kinds of underlying problems between parents and children and how to address them. And our values are compassion, clarity, and growth. And we've got members from all over the world of different backgrounds, different faiths, different, just many different countries in the club. And they all have the one thing in common of estrangement from adult children. We have live events. So there's community there.
No, it's so good. When you have an estranged child, a lot of people will not want to talk to anybody. And one of their biggest needs is community. So they come into something like what you have, and they have community, and they hear somebody else. They think 2 things. One is, wow, my life isn't as bad as theirs. Or others like, wow, they're having the same things, and here's how they're working through it. So you can learn a lot. So good. Tina, thank you for being with us. I appreciate you so much. And remember, everybody, all things Tina are on our podcast notes. If you didn't catch that, if you didn't catch the website or any of those things, there it is. We have that. Okay. So there you go.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on the show.
What a privilege to have you. Hey, and by the way, everybody, let me just say a couple of things here in closing. First of all, I want to say, and Tina said it so well, but there is hope. Nobody said it was going to be easy. I mean, parenting isn't easy. And, we thought it was hard when our kids were young, and then they become adults and they go into an estrangement type of thing, or they're just adults. And I remember Kathy saying, wow, didn't see this happening. What is going on? But let me say it, and I think she described it so well. You are running a marathon with your family, not a sprint. So Tina's book called Reconnecting with Your Adult Child says this, and I believe that for so many people, we need a roadmap. And for me, this has been a great roadmap that I use as a source for people toward healing and hope. Okay, so yeah, there's hope. Also, find support, find counsel. You are not meant to go through this difficult family situation alone. We are not meant to go through these alone. And I know for some of us, we have shame, or we have sometimes just mixed with pride and shame. It's hard to find safe people, but they're out there. So you go find those safe people and counsel. I talked about, even the Bible says where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Good advice. Maybe you start by buying Tina's book, joining that Reconnection club, but there's counsel there. And believe me, there's wisdom and counsel. That's what's so important. And when you get the right counsel, a lot of times it helps you with that roadmap. The other thing I would say is, well, just hear this. Unsolicited advice is usually going to be taken as criticism from your adult children. Your intentions are almost always pure. I've never questioned intentions, but you will want to help, but sometimes, and dare I say many times, adult children view us as intrusive with advice, and they don't want to listen to the advice. And you know why? Because it's not like they don't like the advice. They just don't believe that we think they're all grown. So bite your tongue, ask for permission to give advice, and just keep your mouth shut, and they'll welcome that out sometimes. I was saying on the podcast last time that I had asked for permission to talk to my daughter Christy and Steve about something they were doing on their move. And I said, Christy, do I have permission to talk into this? And she said, no, not now, Dad. I went, wait, people pay me to give them, advice. And the funny thing is that 2 weeks later, she's like, hey, Dad, what was that? After they'd had a disaster with this move thing. So sometimes experience is going to be a better teacher than advice, frankly. And so we have to do that. But you know what? When your kids violate your values, when they stray from your faith, the bottom line is they're still asking this one question: do you still love me? And that's an action. That's where what Tina was saying when we talk about compassion and empathy, they've got to know that you love them. And just because they violated your values or they strayed from your faith or whatever it might be, they need to know that you are standing there with love. You don't have to agree with everything that they're doing, but, lead with love. Kindness matters. Great podcast today. I'm thinking about even parents who don't have estranged adult children. There was a lot for you in this. So thanks for listening on today's podcast, all the podcast platforms worldwide. We're always amazed that people are listening in every country around the world, and some countries that I'm shocked even can have, the podcast going. Thanks for watching on the YouTube channel. If you see the Homeward YouTube channel, we appreciate that. Greatest listeners in the world. I'm so honored, and I just want to tell you I love you and I appreciate you. And again, my deepest thanks to Tina Gilbertson. All information on our podcast show notes. Until next time, I'm Jim Burns. You're listening to Homeward.